It's May 22nd, 2026. Guys, welcome to episode 23 of the Ancient Intelligent Files. And we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday because we've got a countdown that's accelerating at Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Lake Mead is going to be impacted the worst first, I think. And it's important because, and I want to say thank you. You guys came in the comments yesterday after I asked you to give us some local reporting, like from Lake Corpus Christi, bad shape. We looked at some images of that and different areas, different rivers, different states. And that lets us kind of get an overall picture. But what we're looking at right now today live is Lake Mead. It's the, notice it says last 14 measurements, and I've got it squeezed off to one section of the graph. We're going to move it across, but this is the only way I can get it big enough to where maybe you can see it. Now it starts at the bottom, and right here, 1054. This is the average, this bottom line going all the way across of the 14 days, okay? But it started at 1054.62. And it is down to 1051.92. Remember yesterday it was 1052.08. And so we've got to, as from yesterday to today, a 0.17% foot of a change. Now overall the 14-day average is 20 or 0.21. The change. Notice the letters are in red and have a minus. Now because Lake Powell's being cut off, or it's not being cut off, it's cutting off its output by half, then its numbers are in the green and going up slightly. Not a lot, but you'll see when we get there. Now notice the inflow rate here has not changed much. The average over 14 days has been 79.09. That's cubic feet per second of water coming in. Now yesterday and going into today is 7755. So it hasn't changed that much, but it is declining. Notice it started at 8,024 and now, so you haven't lost that much, 250 cubic feet per second or so, but it's definitely a downhill pattern. But what it does show is 2 weeks ago, we were looking at about twice this much inflow out of Powell. So that was cut in half, and it's stabilizing pretty well here. The average content, 7913, but today is 7821. So you're seeing the decrease starting there. Now, if you take these numbers, and that's important, and look at them, we're going to do that in just a moment on a calculator, we can kind of get close to the days. But let's first, before I do that, let me slide this over again. I've got it enlarged, so we can see the numbers. On the phone, it would still be pretty hard. But we're now at the outflow and the temperatures over here. So average outflow coming out of Mead has been 1454 cubic feet per second, 14,545.1. Now, that was, the day it started was 140.19. Now the outflow rate is 12,200. You see that again, cubic feet per second. So it's having to slow down and try to balance out the inflow coming in out of Powell. One major difference is it was 92 degrees. It was the average, but it started on 14 days ago at 96. And we're seeing it back up to that area. We saw it get into 103, 102. Now it's back to about where it's started at, average at 92.6. That's what they do is use that and look at the a couple of other factors to get the evaporation rate. So it's very warm weather there. And remember the V bottom of the lake. The lower it drops, guys, the faster it drops because you have less you have less acre feet exposed to the evaporation process and the downhill outlet. So they will have to slow down the outflow rates to preserve anything. I don't know if they will be able to because the water rights do not change until October, or they're not, I guess change is not the right word. The current ones expire in October, and there really haven't seen any definite plans on who gets what in the allocations coming up. Now, if we're going to take a couple different numbers from here. The overall average, for the 14 days has been 0.21 feet minus, right? Now let's do a little math on that. Pull this up. And so 0.21 times 9 would give us 1.89 feet. Now remember, Tier 2 starts at 10,050 feet. Today it's at 5190, so it's 1.91 feet. Let's go back to that measurement again, or that calculator again. So in 9 days, we're past that 10,050 mark, going into Tier 2 restrictions. That's if we see the inflow and outflow rates balance and maintain. If Powell starts to be forced to lower during that time, or if we see another spike in the temperature, remember in that the 14-day temperature chart, right in the middle was a couple of 102 days of temperature. So we had that increase. It's a little cooler now. But in 9 days, we would be below the 1050 Tier 2. Now, another important factor while we're here on Meade is let's look at how long it would take at the current rates to get to 1035, and then that goes to a whole different stage of trouble, guys, big time. Again, we are at 5191, so that is 16.91 feet above the 10,035, and that's where everything gets real drastic, the low cutoff points and everything. A lot of changes will come from that point. So if we take that same 0.21 average and put it into the calculator, and again, this is current. And we're using the current average. If this number, 0.21, which is a 14-day average, or these individual numbers start rising, or start getting higher with a minus, then you're going to see the calculations be forced forward in time, but keeping it at 0.21% average. Let's go to our calculator again. Let me pull this over here. 20.21 times 81 days is 1701. And again, that would put us below 1035 at about 1034. 81 days. So 80 days at the current rate of droppage would put us at 1035. Critical number. And so that's not that far away, guys, less than 3 months. That's if not counting in the days getting much hotter, the evaporation rate getting much higher, and the water dropping into the lower, shallower, narrower areas. Now let's take a look at Lake Powell going upstream. The elevation, this is above sea level, guys. It's 3527.60. Now the dam is not that big. They're looking at, again, elevation above sea level. And so that's pretty stable. Look, the average 3526 hanging right in there for the whole 14 days. And everything's in the green over here, averaging 0.12 of a foot rise per day. You've had some days 19, 18, 24. Now here's why they're stabilizing. Well, there's two reasons. One is the average was 11,449 cubic feet per second over the 14 days, but that 2-week period started at 78.56. See that? And it has increased the inflow to 11,010 cubic feet per second because of the release from upstream dams, and they're being sacrificed. Now its outflow rate averaged over the 14 days 7509, 7620. Now again, in the 2-week chart before this, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, outflow was around 14,000. So that's cut in half and pretty stable. It hasn't changed much. 7509, 7620, just is not changed. They're cutting it down, averaging the output as they increase the input, and that is why you see Lake Powell in the green. If they were not increasing the input, these numbers would be in the red. And so that just tells you the pressure from Flaming Gorge. And guys, there's a lot of other dams up there, and some are just being emptied to try to save these two, I think. Now, looking at Lake Powell for 1 year, the past 12 months, this is important because, again, it was the backup battery but it's draining uphill resources pretty fast to maintain itself. But it's down 31 feet from 1 year ago. Today, 31.9 feet. And that's with it, you see the intakes coming in, and it's stopping half the output that normally would go to Meade. Now, Lake Powell is up 1.65 feet from the low for water year. Guys, and that goes back to this dip right here, again, May 9th, and then they started cutting off their outflow and increasing their inflow. But still, that's a pretty big dip, and that just tells you the uphill or upstream batteries are very low. And let's switch to 1 or 12 months at Lake Meade. And you can see it's at its lowest here. That's what we're looking at today, right there, 151.91. And over the winter, you know, things got better. You had some snowfall, some rain and things like that that came through. That helped a lot. And what we're seeing is Lake Meade is at a low for this water year and down 1423 feet from the high here. Now, it's down 6.8 feet from 1 year ago, but how did that happen? Well, we know what's happening. There hasn't been enough snow or rain in the area to handle the loads of the expanding Vegas, Arizona, Phoenix area, all of that. And so it's just a combination. But here's a key. The average intake acre feet that comes from Powell down to Meade is 3,928,000. But this year they took in 4,294,000 acre feet. See that? So they were preparing. If they hadn't increased it by 1 million acre feet, guys, or not 1 million, but 300,000 acre feet, they would definitely be in trouble. But the total release for this year going downstream is 48.7% of the minimum required release of 9 million acre feet. They know what's coming. You can see it. And again, you can see the numbers rise. So remember, Powell's batteries are low. It's got to maintain what it has now. It can't go down a whole lot further. But if we're talking about 81 days, looking at 1035, and this comes from the water desk, but it says when Lake Meade's water level drops to 1035 feet, it acts as a critical threshold for Hoover Dam, triggering a massive loss of hydropower generation. It says at this elevation, the following impacts occur. Severe power cuts. The dam's water pressure becomes too low to safely operate its 12 older turbines without risking severe damage. Again, cavitation. And guys, with those 12 turbines, that's 80% of the power cut, gone. It says only 5 newer design Whitehead turbines can remain active, slashing the dam's total power output by roughly 70 to 80% from 1,300 megawatts down to 300 megawatts. And I think one of the 5 turbines that they're talking about, the Whitehead ones, guys, the newer ones, is in repair. I'm not sure. One of the turbines are. It's down for repair. And the regional grid strain, it says the electricity generated by Hoover Dam supplies roughly 1.3 million homes from Nevada, Arizona, and California. Reduced output forces regional power providers to buy replacement energy at fluctuating higher market prices, which can lead to raised utility bills. And the price of everything is going up. But you think about it, that is going to increase not only your price of electricity to run your air conditioning, but it's going to put an increased strain, not being able to take this energy, it's going to put an increased strain on the older grid that we've been talking about that's not going to get the nighttime cooling because of data centers. And it says these can lead to raised utility bills. And guys, you know they will. And that's going to be trouble. It's going to be like water. They're saying some people's water bill, they could quickly see it go to $300, just the water bill, because of these dams. So you're getting into the situation where you're not only migrating because of lack of water, but because you can't afford it. That's kind of a forced migration. But that's how it's going to work out. if all of this happens. And would take a Noah's flood in that area, just about a monsoon, to slow it down. Now, they're saying there will be no immediate drinking water cuts. The drop does not immediately shut off downstream water deliveries to cities like Vegas, Phoenix, or Los Angeles, but it does leave less energy available for agricultural and municipal water districts to pump and move their allocations. And again, the data centers can't be turned off. And a lot of them are trying to have their own supplies and pre-bought and all of this, but they can't be turned off. You only have, I don't think it's 15 minutes, and it's like 120 or 130 degrees inside one of these if they lose cooling. It's unbearable, and it quickly melts down everything if it's not shut down. Anyway, and guys, this is from the Arizona Farm Bureau, the article, and it's not even a month old, 4/24/2026. It says Lake Mead could mothball most of its power generating turbines by this fall. Very well could. 1035, guys, we calculated 81 days. Remember, that's at current, but that's without the heat wave, extra evaporation, and whatever comes along. They need a lot of rain. And they're saying that the federal government is planning to release as little as 6 million acre-feet of water from Lake Powell this year, a historic low. Again, that's above Mead. They're saying the move is necessary after an abysmally dry winter to keep plummeting lake levels above 3,490 feet of elevation, the point where water is too low to flow through the turbines that generate hydropower. But doing so could create another hydropower mess downstream at Mead. That's what we're looking at, especially impacting the Arizona farmers and ranchers that rely on this electricity to pump and move water. The modified release could drop Mead's water levels below 1035 feet of elevation by fall. Now, we calculated 81 days at current levels. We're basically knocking out most of Hoover's generating capacity, said Jordi Fuentes, executive director of the Arizona Power Authority that oversees the state's share of the power. When that happens, the resource becomes unaffordable for most of our customers. Did you hear what our Arizona Farm Bureau is telling you? Now, what you better do is, somewhere in your mind, you better let this stick, and you better be planning, because, again, we have power shortages in the area, things like that. We have problems with any type of banking situation. You saw what happened with Chase, shut down over the weekend. Agentic AIs, I guess they're throwing a party. Anyway, things can collapse very quickly. So not only would you be losing, you wouldn't be able to afford your power, which forces you out of the area, but you would be right in a crowd, guys, of a lot of people moving at one time. And so have a plan. Just have a plan. So you could stay with some friends or family or whatever till they get this thing situated. Whatever you need to do, just have it in the back of your mind. Again, they're telling you it will become unaffordable to most of our customers. Arizona Power Authority. Guys, and just for reference, let's go back to Lake Powell. And this reading was May 21st. Powell was at 3527.60. Remember that number. We'll have something to compare it to with what we're about to read. And if you get at that level, guys, it starts damaging the entire structure of the system at Lake Powell. So the Bureau of Reclamation has decided it will stay at 3490. Okay? It will not get below that. So it's telling you they're going to drain everything above it that they can, and they're not going to let much out into Mead. That's why I keep saying what I said. If things stay the same, and obviously they're going to keep Powell alive and sacrifice Mead, and it was originally designed to be just the opposite. But again, the populations have greatly changed. It was long thought that Mead, which had a different dam design than Powell, had more of a hydropower buffer than its upstream counterpart. And you've got the elevation, the very bottom is 950, and I think that has to do with maybe the tunnel that Vegas put in a few years back. But the lake is 100 feet above that now. That's at Mead. And they have the same concerns. If they try to do anything below that, it's going to cause damage to Meade's turbines. And you got 17 altogether? You got 17. And they would never be able to replace. And guys, they're hoping on having a future, you know, to preserve what they got. Hopefully Mother Nature will replenish some of the reservoirs, or maybe the entire Colorado River system and many other places. And that, so they won't have to replace the turbines. In other words, they don't want to go all out right now and tear everything up for the last drop. You cannot blame them for that. And again, Powell has 5 million customers. Now, Vegas is really super overpopulated, but they're probably the most prepared, maybe not for the rush of people, but I think a lot of people are going to be moving out of there. But they're going to be the last ones to go because they got that new tunnel where they got the last bottom bathtub outlet. They have to pump it way up, but they're independent of the first cutoffs. Also, their power for their pumps, and most of Vegas, comes from outside sources. It was well planned. It's just being overpopulated. Now, what we're going to see, guys, is you realize those houses probably that you see in the area around the lakes and all, when you see some of the YouTubers be traveling through there and telling you about Meade and everything, you know, probably $3 million, $4 million homes. But when you don't have access to water, now this is, again, we're talking about Vegas, but you think about Arizona, you think about Phoenix and Los Angeles. When you don't have access to drinking water, the property collapses, the property value collapses. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because who's going to buy a house where you don't have access to water, right? So immediately people are going to, they'll be forced not to be able to pay their home off. The banks are heavy into lending for homeowners. You know that. And so who is going to be in big trouble? The banks. As soon as these water disasters happen, property values will drop, the banks will start collapsing, and because of the new rules, the bail-in, there goes anything we have in the bank. Anyway, listen, under uncertain water cuts after 2026, it's not going to take that long. But anyway, when the current rules governing the lake expire, that's in October if I'm not mistaken, they will further complicate long-term planning for the 71, listen, Arizona cities, tribes, electrical co-ops, and irrigation districts that receive power from Hoover Dam. 71 cities, tribes, co-ops, irrigation. The way our contract is set up, we pay the same amount whether we get our contracted energy or not, said Robert Van Hofwagen, a dairy farmer and district manager of Electrical District 8, which delivers power in western Maricopa County and eastern Yuma. Paring back production makes each unit of power more expensive and less competitive with other energy options. Unaffordable. It also represents the loss of clean, renewable power sources, one that can ramp up quickly and efficiently during times of high energy use. We talked about the Salt River project earlier, the one that feeds the data centers. Even though the data centers paid for the new hot poles and that mega power that goes up and down them, they are again tied into the Salt River project. It says, if Meade loses power, it says the reliability of Meade is crucial because it helps stabilize the Western power grid and Salt River project. Now, I don't know what locations as far as residential and everything is tied into Salt River. We do know that they have the main power grid built in again for the data centers. So there's all these collapse points in between that can be triggered by 24/7 warm transformers, increased solar activity, increased summer temperatures, and the El Nino. It's just poor planning all the way around, but way beyond that, we're looking at possible collapse of many areas. 71 Arizona cities could be losing water or have major water cuts Again, that's in October. Because no amount of contracts, no amount of lawyers can make it rain. And that's where the brick wall hits. Right there, it stops everything. You cannot argue in court and make it rain. And that's the main problem. And they're just going to be arguing over the last drops. Plan, because it's happened in civilization, guys, for thousands of years. Things like this, having to move. You know, there was a time when in the Northeast, and it was in semi-modern eras, but guys, it was so cold, it was a year without a summer. Someone looked that date up. Anyway, more people moved to California to get out of that cold weather than did the people going into the California gold rush. It was a major move, just like we're talking about now. Someone looked that up. I can't remember. I read it several years ago. But again, I think it's the year without a summer and mass migration to the west. Check that out. And that, again, it's not something that we haven't seen before, and that's very recent history compared to overall time. So they were forced to. It was too cold. They couldn't grow the crops. People depended on eating what they grew back then. And when your whole summer crop is wiped out, that you eat that summer and then store for futures is gone, what do? You sit there and starve to death, or you adapt, which is going to be hard to do, or you die again. Adapt, you have to migrate or die. Adapt, migrate, or die. Very harsh sounding words, but it happened. Look that article up. Very interesting. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to keep you much longer, but what I'm going to do is top off yesterday's video and dig a little bit deeper into the details and look at some of the timing. Now, what we're going to do in each day, I'm going to check in on some of the levels just to see if the evaporation rate and the decline is increasing. Because so let's go back. We're looking at about 9 days getting to 10,050 at Meade. And we're looking at about 81 days at getting to 1035, where just about all the turbines have to be shut off. Not a lot of water goes out, not for very long. If it's destroying the tunnels, they let it out through the emergency tunnels. They just weren't built for that. So we'll be watching it, guys. I think it's very important. We're seeing a battle. It's like a mad rush of the AI centers and other land developers and everything else to consume every last drop of the desert Southwest in that area. Now, we see it everywhere. But of all places, that place, it's because, first of all, they came in and bid on water much cheaper than you and I could get it. Very cheap water, again, coming from upstream. And more than likely, the data centers will be able to override even I think Phoenix area has some underground storage of water, big underground storage facilities. They will tap that because you cannot stop the data centers. Think of this. It's built in. They get the last drop. Why? Because they run the banks. If they go down, the banks go down immediately. Everything halts immediately. You understand what I'm saying? Grinds to a halt if they let the data centers go down. Now, they have backup. Again, I mentioned that. But if you have problems with that backup or anything else goes wrong, then really what's happening, guys, it's a delay. When these things start falling, it's going to be a domino effect because why? Water. Look at the lakes in Florida. Look at Corpus Christi. Look into the middle of the country. Look at the Mississippi River. Look at the Colorado River. Look at the Rio Grande River. It's really in bad shape. The Rio Grande in places, guys, and I think it's Albuquerque. I saw some images. It, again, looks just like it's pools of water, basically, not a continuous flow. So it's going to spread very quickly. You know what's going to happen? We're about to see a very hot summer because of El Nino. We're going to see solar flares increase. We're going to see the drought increase. Now, we are so fortunate here this year, and that's changing. It's been getting warmer, but we've had rain for about 3 or 4 days, and the grass needs cutting very quick again, but to me, that's a good sign compared to the drought years we've seen in just the last 4 or 5 years. And the heat, and it's keeping the heat bearable. It's hot, humid, but not like we've seen it. And so to me, the rain's a blessing, especially when I'm doing these videos. But let me say this, here in central Mississippi, just this year, I think I may have mentioned it, we had a tank that had been up maybe 30 years, maybe not that long, about that long probably, out in the rural area where we live, just houses here and there, you know, and it went dry. And so they had to come in and drill an auxiliary well to be a temporary fix. And then the state has allocated about $2 million per community that this is happening to. Listen to me. And our elevation is about 300 and something feet above sea level. But what the federal government has done with these grants that I think you have to go through the Board of Supervisors, state and all of that, the feds, to get the grant, but they got it here, if I'm not mistaken. But what they're having to do is now go to an extreme depth, deep down beyond the normal water tables, go through another solid layer of clay into an untapped reservoir. Now, I think here we've seen, again, it's everywhere, but there's a lot of industry, poultry industry here that uses a lot of water. And so that's a problem. We don't have the data center problem like a lot of people do. But again, that has dried up ponds, things like that. And what that tells you, when your ponds start leaking in lakes, the aquifer below it is running low. And so gravity takes over. It finally pushes through to the lower aquifers, or to the cavity that was created by the low aquifer. But now they're having to drill past that. And one problem with it, guys, is from what I read, they're picking up a lot of minerals that are very dangerous at that depth in the water. That's where they're headed with it. So we're seeing a planetary move here. And again, the earth will rebalance itself, whether it takes a flood or whatever it is. But again, this time, not by flood, but by fire. The earth will protect itself. Our Father will step in before the tech of the fallen take over completely, which they really have taken over. They just hadn't destroyed everything quite yet. They're hell-bent on doing it, and they're rushing downhill fast. Guys, I don't want to draw this out any longer. I just wanted to, again, top off yesterday's video with a little bit more detail and digging a little deeper into the numbers, just to put it in your head for the people in the 71 Arizona cities and the affected tribes and the businesses. Don't forget about it, and you better start looking now for a backup plan. If we get a good rain, hallelujah. That's what we all should be praying for. But you got to have a backup plan. Nothing is magic. It works by nature. And the earth will protect itself. And that's what we're seeing it forced to do right now. Think about it. And it never hurts to have a backup plan. Plus, let me say this. I haven't done this in over a year. Now, most of you guys know about our website. It's been up at least a dozen years, maybe, bpearthwatch.com. And if something ever happens to our YouTube channel, we do have Patreon, but we also, I can put our videos straight here. And Tina does this, and these are just copies of YouTube, but I have the original video files, and they can be loaded here also. So that's one thing. But what I want to say is this water filter right here. This is one we always have. They've got it $100 off. Usually that lasts 1 or 2 days. That's the #1 water filter on the planet. Let's click on it. I didn't do the video for this ad at the end, but this just came out today, and I want to tell you about it because it's a great deal. It's a lifesaver. Now, again, I don't do a lot of advertisement. You're not going to see it very often. But my Patriot Supply has been our main backer for about a dozen years. Got us through some hard times. Got us through a couple of channels going down, things like that. Anyway, the Alexa Pro water filtration system, guys, many of you know about this one. It has charcoal filtration. You can get river water, whatever it is, or just your tap water, pour it into the top. It filters through, and you got a tap at the bottom. We have two. I got one year, and a couple of years later, we got another. We even give our pets water out of these things because of the high chlorine that you smell coming out of the tap. But anyway, they pack up, and they can bug out if you needed it. But even if nothing ever happens, just getting the chlorine and the chemicals out is well worth it. We do not cook without it. We do not fill up ice cubes without it, or anything else like that, guys. Everything consumed comes through these filters, and they're #1 rated. And you can get a tremendous amount of water through the filters. Anyway, $100 off from $279 to $179. And let me just show you a couple of other things. They have a deal set up, guys, to where, and you take advantage of it, because you can get 4 payments at $44.99 each. Pay it off. You don't have to have the $179.95. A lot of people qualify, and you can click on that to look at it. But let me show you something about the water filter. Guys, in these charcoal filters, they're basically unmatched. It says it reduces 200 plus contaminants, filters out 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, chlorine, vinyl chloride, fluoride, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, viruses, heavy metals, lead. Again, stainless steel, guys, stainless steel handle, or the faucet here, spigot. And the first one I got, it had the black plastic one, guys. You remember that? Now they have the stainless steel, and if you ever have to replace the old ones, these just screw in. And something else about this, let me tell you about it. Now, about 10 years ago, guys, we did a video, and this is on the center row of bpearthwatch.com. Come down, you'll see this. This is on our back porch, but we go into how the water filter works, how simple it is, and take a look at AlkaFlow Max. We invented that for this particular tank, and it increases the air exchange between the two tanks. Again, guys, come to bpearthwatch.com, check it out. And remember, our videos will always be here no matter what else happens, so remember that. And come over, here is the water filter. Again, this sometimes will last until the warehouse runs out that day, okay? Take advantage of it now. If you don't use it right away, that's up to you, but it comes half this size because of the canister stack. That's the way it bugs out too. Anyway, take advantage of that, and while you're there, check out their long-term survival food. 2 things that are very important, and that's the reason they're on bpearthwatch.com. And again, 1 ad a year is not too bad, is it, guys, compared to some. See you soon. It's a heads up. May God bless every one of you, and be safe.